The version 6.1 livestream felt like it was for two completely different games. One of those games is getting what looks to be a narrative masterpiece, a convergence of lore, long-awaited characters like Varka and Durin, and stakes that feel higher than ever. It is the Genshin Impact that long-term players are deeply invested in. The other game is getting a massive, heavily monetized new system that feels completely disconnected from that core experience. A system that some are calling a game within a game, while basic quality of life issues that players have requested for years remain ignored. The strange part is, both of these are the same game in the same update, and this deep split in priorities is what makes version 6.1 so fascinating, and for many, so concerning. It perfectly captures the growing disconnect between the game HoYoverse is building and the game many players feel like they are losing. In this video, we're going to break down this strange dichotomy, the incredible story, the controversial new systems, and what this all means for the future of Genshin Impact. If you appreciate this kind of breakdown, consider subscribing. It is the best way to support the channel. With that being said, let's start with a part of the update that almost everyone is excited about: the story. Amidst all of the discussions and the mixed reactions, there is one area where the livestream seemed to land almost perfectly, and that is the story. The trailer for the Archon quest was, by almost all accounts, the undisputed highlight of the entire program. In a patch without a new map to explore, this is the primary hook, the main event, and HoYoverse seems to be fully aware of that, because they have loaded this quest with what can only be described as a narrative payoff that has been years in the making. We are seeing a true convergence, where multiple long-running threads of a story are finally starting to intersect. First, you have Varka, a name we have only heard in dialogue and item descriptions for 5 years now. The Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius, a character who has been a complete mystery since the game launch, is finally making his on-screen appearance. And then there's Dainsleif. Whenever Dainsleif shows up, we are moving past the regional side stories and back to the main plot. His presence as a former royal guard of Old Khaenri'ah is a guarantee that things are about to get serious, focusing on the core mysteries of the Abyss. We even have Durin. For years, he was just a skeleton, the literal mountain of dragon spine, and now he is a conscious character with a voice and a role to play, shifting from a piece of environmental lore to an active participant. On top of that, we have a gathering of major figures. We have Albedo returning, and a group of 𝗖cie harbingers, Arlecchino, Sandroni, and of course, Columbina, finally taking a more central role. Where is Tartaglia, by the way? Where is my boyfriend? But anyways, it is an incredibly staked cast. This convergence has sent lore theorists into overdrive, with speculations about the Crimson Moon dynasty of Khaenri'ah connecting characters like Rerir and Arlecchino, or theories about the Traveler needing to collect fragments of moon marrow. And personally, this is where I hope the story finally takes a real risk. The livestream builds up the antagonist Rerir as this world-ending threat, strong enough to take on entire nations. They are setting him up like Thanos, and we're supposed to be the Avengers. And I'm gonna be for real, for once, I want the good guys to lose. I want an Infinity War moment. Let the heroes fail. Let the Traveler feel actual despair, guilt, and loss, forcing them to grow from a place of desperation. For years, across many regions, the story always falls back to the power of friendship prevails trope, like in Inazuma or in Natlan. And I just think it is time for something genuinely impactful. And to make sure they had everyone's full attention, they threw in a little bit of classic misdirection. For a brief second in the trailer, we see this character, someone who looks almost exactly like Welt from Honkai Star Rail. Now, is this actually Welt crossing over into Genshin? Almost certainly not. It is most likely bait. As the community quickly called it, it is a familiar character model used to get people talking. And it worked. It dominated discussions for a while, and it added another layer of intrigue into an already dead story. This is the core of HoYoverse's strategy for a patch like this. It is their narrative anchor. When a patch is light on the other content, the story has to do all of the heavy lifting. It must be compelling enough to be the sole reason everyone logs in and keep the game's momentum from stalling. And HoYoverse needs that story to be powerful, because once you look beyond the impressive narrative, the polish on this update starts to show some cracks, beginning with the character models themselves. Let's start with Durin. In the promotional art and the animated shorts, he looked fantastic. He had this imposing, elegant design that got a lot of people excited. The expectation was that we were getting a top-tier polished character, and then we saw the in-game model. The feedback was immediate and negative. Players pointed out that the model felt choppy, that his iconic wings were missing, and that his clothing choices were just strange. The phrase, "the pants standing out way too much," became a common complaint. It sounds like a minor detail, but in a game built on visual appeal, these details are everything. As a result, there is a significant number of players who were ready to spend their Primogems on him instantly lost interest. It is a perfect example of how, in a gacha game, aesthetics are the product. A visual downgrade is a product downgrade. Varka's model, however, was more complicated. Instead of a simple good or bad verdict, it sparked a clash of expectations. On one side, a large portion of the community was thrilled. They saw Varka's bulky build and more rugged, manly features as a welcome change. Things like a defined nose bridge and a jawline and large badonkers, you know what I'm saying? Features that are less common in the game's typical character models. After years of mostly slender pretty boy models, this was a move toward more diversity in character design. People said he looked fit to be the leader of Favonius, and that the design was a step in the right direction. Meanwhile, other players were concerned less with the style and more with the technical quality of the model. The criticism was that he looked unfinished, lacking the same level of detail and polish as other new characters. He was described as having NPC level detail, which sparked the fear that he might not be playable. When a character looks more like a generic quest giver than a premium 5-star, it is a legitimate concern. These two debates over Durin and Varka reveal something important about where Genshin is right now. The player base has incredibly high standards, where every single detail of a character model is put under a microscope. The developers are trying to evolve their design language and introduce new body types, but their execution is now being heavily scrutinized. This intense scrutiny over visuals is a sign of a much deeper conversation about the game's core philosophy and how characters are designed to be played and ultimately sold. And that brings us to the new 5-star character Nefer. And on a personal note, there is a running joke in my community that Nefer, with her green-themed design and haircut, looks a bit like me. So I never thought I'd see the day I'd become a playable character in Genshin Impact, but I guess you can say never say never. Am I right? No? Never say never. Alright, jokes aside, on the surface, her design was well received. She is elegant and looks cool, but digging into her actual kit reveals a design choice that the community started to call synergy gating. Basically, it is the idea that a new character is intentionally designed to be significantly weaker unless you also own another specific limited 5-star character. In this case, Llama from the previous version. The issue here goes deeper than team building. It is the perception that a character's full potential is now locked behind a second, separate paywall. This effectively doubles the cost for anyone who wants to play this new character at her best, leading to a lot of friction with players on a budget or who are free to play. It prompted a very blunt but accurate reaction from many, and of course myself. Lock it behind a limited 5-star, goddammit. Genshin never changes. And this feeling that the game's design is becoming more demanding while offering less is echoed in the rest of the patch's content. The flagship event makes a return to Sumeru, featuring familiar faces like 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝗁 and Tighnari, but gives out a free copy of 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝗁. She is a character most long-term players already have, likely with all of her constellations, because she has been given away for free multiple times. For a veteran player, this reward is effectively worthless and feels redundant, especially when players pointed out that other characters in the event, like Farazan or Kavi, would have been far more valuable rewards. And then there's the TCG update, which for the vast majority of the player base might as well not exist. And don't talk to me like you played the TCG, brother. You know you ain't doing that. On top of that is the complete absence of the double artifact event. I was hoping that it would become a regular feature, a small bonus for players to look forward to. Its disappearance in version 6.1 is a quiet disappointment, reinforcing the feeling that popular, player-friendly features aren't being prioritized. The result is a huge disconnect in priorities. And this patch, in version 6.1, there is no announcement of any bug fixes or QoL updates. And when they look at the situation, they will say they can do all this, but not a skip button, but not a loadout system. And that single sentiment sums up years of player feedback. It is the feeling that the core game is being ignored in favor of building something new. And as we will see, something with its own aggressive monetization. This growing sense of neglect for the core game serves as the backdrop of the update's main event. And it is the reason for so much of the skepticism surrounding the single biggest and most controversial feature of this patch, Miliastra Wonderland. This is not a new event or a mini game. It is a massive permanent user-generated content, or UGC mode. Think of it as a game within Genshin Impact. The community often compared it to Chinese Roblox, or even the very predatory Infinity Nikki, a fashion game with its own gacha for outfits. That comparison isn't accidental because at its core, Wonderland is a self-contained platform with its own gacha system, its own battle pass, and its own economy. And to many, it looks like a pretty blatant attempt to get more money money out of the players. Hey, Dawei, I am not aware of your game, bro. This strategy is insane. HoYoverse is like the Stephen Curry of predatory monetization. They just keep shooting ball from nowhere, bruh. From the half court, from the full court, they made the 3-point. It is insane. This ambitious move was, predictably, split the community right down the middle. On one side are the optimists, what we are calling the bull case. These players see immense potential, believing that by letting the community create its own experiences, Wonderland will provide infinite content and dramatically extend Genshin's lifespan. It is seen as a brilliant solution to content droughts, ensuring there is always something new to do, even after the main story of 𝗖𝗏 wraps up. And then there is the bear case, the skeptics, who view the Wonderland with apprehension or even outright hostility. Many of these players simply tuned out during this part of the livestream. Their biggest fear is that building such a massive new system will inevitably divert resources and attention away from the core RPG experience. For them, it is more than a distraction. Some even see it as the biggest death flag Genshin has had so far, a sign that HoYoverse is preparing for the end of the main game's development and building an exit strategy. When you look at the nature of the system, it is easy to see why those fears exist. The monetization is complex. There is a new separate gacha and a separate battle pass. When they showed off the craftable cosmetics, the free to obtain stuff, they were all low rarity, the 2-star cosmetics, or just the breadcrumbs, you know? Meanwhile, the desirable outfits are clearly locked behind new paywalls, priced similarly to the already expensive skins in the main game. This prompts the critical question many players are asking. Why can't this be a different game? Why does it have to be inside Genshin? And the answer is quite simple and strategic. This is HoYoverse! This is HoYoverse's calculated Roblox gambit. They are trying to transform Genshin Impact from a product, a finite content-driven RPG, into a platform that is self-sustaining, creative ecosystem. By building it within Genshin, they immediately gain access to the massive existing player base, which is a huge advantage over launching a new IP. It is a high-stakes bet designed to future-proof the Genshin Impact brand, ensuring its relevance long after the traveler's journey concludes. That larger strategy is the key to understanding this entire update. When you put all of the pieces together, it becomes clear that version 6.1 is more than just another update. It is one of the most strategically significant moments in the game's history, a perfect snapshot of Genshin Impact at a crossroads. On one hand, you have a game that is still capable of delivering world-class, deeply anticipated narrative content that keeps its long-term players invested. On the other, a game that is pursuing a new corporate direction, a platform model that feels completely disconnected from the immediate desires of that same community. This update is a stress test. It is actively pitting the strength of its story against the community's tolerance for aggressive monetization and a perceived neglect of the core RPG experience. It is asking a fundamental question: is a great Archon quest enough to make players overlook everything else? Ultimately, this update feels like a test of what the community values the most, forcing players to consider what kind of game they want Genshin Impact to be in the long run. So I would like to hear what you think. Let me know in the comments below, but that is all from me, 𝗖𝗍𝗆𝗆𝗵𝘁, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers!